My name is Rajen Harshe. I have been teaching political science and international relations for over 4 decades, and I have taught in different universities of India, including University of Hyderabad and South Asian University of Delhi. I shall be talking about changing role of the nation states in post-Cold War world. This is a very important area because nation states have existed since 1648 and number of nation states have grown over the years, the last centuries, and we have 193 members of the United Nations today. Now, how have they survived so long, more than 3 centuries, and successfully? And what is the current phase where nation state is facing that challenge? And how the challenge is being met by nation states, and the challenge is very much of a survival in a globalizing world. Globalizing world, they say, is a borderless world. It allows free flow of ideas, goods, services, finance, technology, currency, terror, diseases. And it also signifies compression of time and space. And how does nation state negotiate with this extraordinarily difficult phase and yet survive? My slant of this lecture will be slightly theoretical, and what I thought was, I'll define the term state and nation before we get into nation state and understand what it is. And it is important conceptually, otherwise no one would understand what nation state means. I begin by talking about what is state and what are its principal characteristics. Now, when you talk about states, there are 2 dominant streams of thought in political science, liberals and the Marxists, who have thought about state. Very conventional liberal scholars identify state as a juridical entity. It's a legal entity. It exists by law. But entity which has 4 principal components like population, territory, sovereignty, and government. So population, territory, sovereignty, and government are essential for the existence of state, according to liberal scholars. And what is the most dominant feature of the state or distinguishing feature of the state? I think state has legitimate or even illegitimate organized physical force. I said legitimate physical force, Max Weber talked about it. But illegitimate because sometimes states come into being and operate without the consent of the governed. But nevertheless, organized violence, organized physical force is an essential characteristic of a state. Second important characteristic in my view is state has extractive powers. It can levy taxes. It can collect taxes legitimately. And because state has organized legitimate physical force on hand, if it is challenged, state has the army, police and other coercive apparatuses to suppress any revolt. So state is a very powerful organ since in modern times. I would also like to say state is juridical, I have told you, and it also comes into existence when community of states recognize it. Take for example, Bangladesh was liberated in 1971, but it became state or recognized state when India offered recognition to Bangladesh, when many other countries offered recognition to Bangladesh. Without international recognition and without the basis of international law, state cannot come into existence. This is the liberal stream I was talking about. But the Marxists also have thought about state, and that is also important for us to understand. Marx and the Marxists, and particularly Marx, who used to look at state as agency of bourgeoisie to implement their projects. He used to look at state as instrument in the hands of dominant classes to control people. Marx had even talked about dictatorship of the proletariat. That means proletariat take over the state and they become dominant classes and control it. So state apparatus is very important in Marxian thinking. Lenin, for instance, thought of state as something like it's a product of irreconcilable contradictions between classes. State is a product of irreconcilable contradictions between classes. That's what Lenin thought about. And in the interwar period, Antonio Gramsci thought very profoundly over state, and he gave idea of hegemony to understand state. And what is hegemony? Hegemony is a reality which is combination of consent and coercion. And state controls through combination of consent and coercion. That somewhere you have consent of the governed, but if consent is not given, then you coerce and bring in your rule and control. But Gramsci definitely believes that that hegemony is organized by the dominant classes or coalition of dominant classes, otherwise hegemony cannot be organized. So this is how liberal and Marxist notions of states have been preeminent in the literature and theory on state. Now, if you look at nation, then what is a nation? State, yes, is juridical, it can be identified because it has definite borders, it has sovereignty, government, population. What is nation? There has been big deal of debate about it, very large debate on nation, important debate. Nation is a psychocultural concept. You psychologically feel a nation. It's a psychocultural. So it has something to do with mind, with emotion. Nation is psychocultural. You feel from within that you are a nation. And many times, in principle, many factors contribute into making a nation, like common language, common culture, common past, common customs, common ethnicity, common civilization, and sometimes common enemy or common enemies. And then people build a nationality. People imagine that they are nation. There's a Benedict Anderson, a political scientist and historian of nation states. He said that nation always is an imagined community. You imagine that you are part of the nation. So this is also a view about the nation. And then when you look at modern nation state, then what is it? Modern nation state is a combination of ethnocultural and civic territorial aspects. Combination of ethnocultural and civic territorial aspects. When you have ethnocultural aspects, you start writing biography of a nation or ethnic. That this is your biography. This is how you were. This is how your culture was. Like, if you talk to any Indian, he will talk about Bharatvarsha, Aryan India, medieval India, how the history has been, how the ethnic has evolved, how Hindu religion and culture have evolved. So you start writing a biography of a nation, and that is ethnocultural. But civic territorial, that means somewhere you decide what could be citizenship, what could be civic culture, what could be rights, what could be obligations. So civic territorial and ethno-national movements are involved in the constitution of nation states. I consider nation state as a very complex phenomenon. In Europe, ideally, people wanted to establish one nation, one state. It is not possible to have one nation, one state. Perhaps only exception is Japan has one state and one nation. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get one nation or one state. Look at our subcontinent and you will realize that before British left, that partition India and Pakistan emerged, and subsequently Bangladesh emerged. So my point is very simple. Bengali and Punjabi, these are two different nationalities. But Bengalis and Punjabi nationalities were divided under two political states. While Bangladesh and West Bengal have a lot in common, like Bengali language, like heroes like Tagore who are literary figures, Punjabi people in India and Punjabis in Pakistan also have a lot in common. The language, Guru Nanak, so many things are common between the two. And still, these are nationalities divided into two different states. I would like to also state that there can be multinational states. One of the best examples of functioning multinational state has been Switzerland. It has Italians, Germans and the French, and all the three languages are spoken in Switzerland. Former Soviet Union also was a multinational state. Now, when you think of all these examples, how does one characterize India? What is India? Many years ago, when India became independent, some of the historians used to characterize India as nation in the making. Because people were thinking of unity in diversity. It is so diverse that it doesn't have clear-cut characteristics of a formal European nation in the making. Hindi should be national language. Why? Because we wanted to think of nation together. Then is India a multinational state? Like what we talk about Maharashtrians, Bengalis, Tamilians, these are nationalities, but they are under one political state. Can that be a description of India? I am raising a question. You have to answer, think about it. Or maybe it is not nation in the making, it is not even multinational state, but it's a civilizational state. That India has been a civilization. Civilization can comprise many nationalities, many religions, many diversities, many languages, and it's a civilization that is India. How does one characterize India? In my view, India doesn't form a part of any conventional definition of state, nation or nation state, and yet it exists, it is important and one of the most important countries in the world. I would also like to say that nation states are also socially constructed. And I will give you an example just to make a point as far as India is concerned. If you look at discovery of India, Jawaharlal Nehru was trying to construct socially India on a geographical map from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and Gujarat to Assam. In those days, Pakistan and Bangladesh were also part of India. But basically the talk of diversity, the talk of unity in diversity, the talk of nationalism which is secular, that was Nehruvian idea of nation state. As against this, Savarkar and others, they thought that India is united by Sindhu to the seas, Sindhu river and the seas, Ase to Himachal. That the people who are staying in geographical area from Sindhu to the seas, they are all Hindus. And that they should be loyal to this country, they should treat it as Pitru Bhumi and Punya Bhumi. That this is the fatherland and sacred land, and they should have no extraterritorial loyalty. That was the notion of Savarkar, and that is popular today, that is being explored today. So you have different, nation is socially constructed reality, and also it has long past to construct it, and India offers a very interesting example of it. So far as contemporary nation states are concerned, they are really facing challenges of different kinds. International regimes like World Trade Organization, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and other financial institutions are pressurizing the nation state of our times from above. While you have also simultaneously pressures coming from different ethnic groups which are secessionist from below. In fact, globalization has brought transnational and local or subnational actors on the center stage, and nation state is being constantly challenged, and that is the challenge nation state has to review and view. This is happening for a simple reason. I would consider that basically boundaries of state and boundaries of nation do not coincide. Because state is juridical, it exists by law, its boundaries are definite, they are worked out among nation states. Nation is psychocultural. So you can be a nationality staying and your counterpart can be somewhere else. And that is the problem with nation state. That's why secessionist movements emerge. I will give you examples of such movements to make a point. Although Spain is a developed country, the Basque secessionist movement working towards separatist Basque land. Irish people tried to get out of United Kingdom. You have Quebecans in Canada who primarily are French, and they feel out of place with English-speaking part, and they also at one point were interested in finding a state for themselves. You have Tamilians in Sri Lanka, and Tamilians in Sri Lanka want their organization, Liberation Tigers for Tamil Land. They wanted a state for themselves, and they revolting against it, and almost 3 decades they struggled till the revolt was suppressed. You have Kurdish people, and Kurdish people or Kurdish nationality or ethnicity, it is located in Iran, Iraq, Turkey and Syria, and they want to establish Turkestan. So you have state and nation or state and ethnicity borders do not necessarily correspond, and you have problems of secession, and then ethnicity gets transnationalized under globalization, and you have tensions and conflicts between ethnicity and nationalism. If you look at Africa, I think African continent has been plagued with secessionist movements of different kinds. I will come to that later. But what has happened in Africa is departing colonial powers left Africa states, left them with states, and they're forced to build nation out of those states. Because Africa's map was drawn by colonial powers in 1885 Conference of Berlin, and they drew it according to the convenience of the European powers, where nationalities and ethnicities were divided. So there's no question of state boundaries matching the national boundaries, and I'll come to it slightly later. But at the moment, I would like to mention one very important thing, that generally Africa secessionist movements were suppressed because they considered inviolability of the frontiers which were inherited after colonial powers departed. And still, you had major struggle of Namibia against South Africa's rule, and Namibia through referendum earned its independence, United Nations referendum in 1990. Eritrea struggled against Ethiopia, and it earned its independence under United Nations referendum in 1993. And Southern Sudan, South Sudan emerged as a separate state after fighting Sudan at large, and it has emerged as a separate state. And these are all results of protracted struggles. Now, if this is the reality, I was thinking I will look at certain regions of the world and see how nation state performs. I am taking West Europe as a first area. Now, as you know, Europe is a cradle of modern civilization. The famous Treaty of Westphalia was signed in Europe in 1648, and that is where modern nation state was born, and that is where modern nation states are flourishing even in our century. 1648 and 2021 nation states are alive, and that is the important part. I would consider that in post-Cold War world, if you look at Europe, and there was a brilliant article by Pierre Hassner, nation state obsolete or obstinate? Obsolete or obstinate? When you look at Western Europe, somewhere apparently nation state looks obsolete, redundant. Why? Because European Union was preceded by European Community, it was preceded by European Economic Community, free flow of goods, ideas, services, it was all common, and the transnational cooperations in western part of Europe and Central Europe consistently, with Germany leading the economic, as a leading economic power, France as a political power. And Western Europe showed a kind of picture of great integration, while Eastern Europe looked like a disintegrating or fragmenting reality. Eastern Europe was located on the tri-junctions of empire, former Soviet Empire and Russian Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire, and these parts, they were clamoring to separate and build nationalities for themselves, and when Russia fell, those nationalities emerged much more strongly, and they became part of European Union, they became part of Europe. So part of Europe looks fragmented, part of Europe looks integrated. That's how Europe appears. In fact, after Brexit in 2016, when Britain withdrew from Europe, European Union has been functioning reasonably well, and it's a good conglomeration of nation states. 27 countries are functioning well. It's also displayed dominance of strong economies like Germany. They are at a dominant end, while countries which are weak like Greece, Portugal, or Spain and Ireland, they are at the receiving end. I would like to say, even though Western Europe apparently looks integrated, somewhere Western European countries also are searching for their roots and identity. And which moment they will assert French identity or German identity or Belgian identity, you can't say. So there can't be conclusive fact that the East European countries are clamoring for nationalities and West European countries are given up their nationalism. If you see Macron's policy is France, then you can see the nationality and national challenge and how nationality is being redefined vis-a-vis radical Islam today. So, it's not necessary that you can conclude. But one thing about Europe that I would like to mention, the entire European Union was built around something like acceptance of democracy as a norm. And when in Austria, Jörg Haider's far-right party, Austrian Freedom Party, participated in the government coalition in 2000, 14 European countries had decided to impose sanctions against Austrian regime. So democracy as a norm, economic integration as a way forward, and it has worked. But West and East Europe display differences as far as contemporary changing nation states are concerned. Let me come down to Africa. Quickly put, Africa, for instance, state is a very powerful instrument. State can build a nation in Africa. There is one thing, African leaders have consistently relied on state strengthening nationalism to see that national integration takes place. In the past, top leaders like Kwame Nkrumah in the 60s, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Sekou Toure, they kind of worked towards it. Nasir also somewhere worked towards it. In modern times, post-globalization, I would consider Nelson Mandela worked towards building a rainbow coalition in South Africa where different races come together and where perpetrators of crime who committed apartheid or who committed racial discrimination apologize to victims, and they build world with forget and forgive through Truth and Reconciliation Commission of South Africa and build a rainbow coalition and a rainbow nation, and South Africa integrates. So, there is Africa, there are different kinds of experiments which have come, and race has been a very important factor in making of Africa and African people. I would consider that, there have been also secessionist movements in Africa, such as Biafrans in Nigeria, which was suppressed. I would also say that, Africa has known civil wars. And as far as civil wars are concerned, Angola, Mozambique, Liberia, there were many kind of contending parties, and wars have gone on in the post-Cold War world without national integration, without finding who is ruling the state. And worse still was war which kind of rested on ethnicity, Rwandan war, where Tutsis were massacred, millions of them, and that was a kind of eye-opener as far as human rights are concerned. But state nations of Africa, I am using the word state nations of Africa, in the post-Cold War phase, they are working through regional economic communities, like Economic Community of West Africa, like South African Development Community, or East African Community, and they are trying to work out a plan of uniting African continent and making Africa as a single unit by the end of 2063. So there are long-term plan around which they have been working, and they have been working successfully. You come to kind of some very important part, and that is Asia. Asia has so many kind of nationalities. Most strong perhaps is China and India. And I would just like to make one point, that diaspora has started playing important role in China as well as India. Only one point as far as Asia is concerned. Chinese diaspora settled in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, remitting so much of money back to motherland China. Chinese population in Southeast Asia also is doing it, or any other parts. But China is known for this. And as far as India is concerned, it has consistently kind of modified the laws of citizenship from 1955 to 2005, and somewhere Indian diaspora is also becoming very important, and it has diasporic nationalism which we have to understand. And I would like to put some time, because of on the basis of blood, birth and naturalization, India's citizenship was given to many people, and Indians abroad, like in Australia, Canada, United States, or in different parts of West Asia, they are remitting lot of money. I must say here that diaspora's role as far as Kerala is concerned, the state of Kerala in India, is significant. So much money came from there in West Asia, Gulf states. I would also like to say, somewhere the entertainment industry cannot be ignored when you think about the diasporic nationalism. I do not know whether you know this, but there was a film called Hum Aapke Hai Kaun. India was going through major foreign exchange crisis, and then this Hum Aapke Hai Kaun was shown in England, in different parts of America, as well as Asia and Africa. Large number of people saw this movie, and it remitted lot of money. Our foreign exchange reserves were strengthened. And that Hum Aapke Hai Kaun type movie inspired people to kind of make other set of movies like Dil Wale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. I am just making this as a point where country, when it is going through economic crisis and nationalism is diasporically located, then they also imagine India, they want to go back to their roots, and they also contribute to they contribute to the state bank bonds. And recently when Trump organize the function Hello Modi to our Honorable Prime Minister. A large number of Indians and primarily Gujaratis participated in it. They were also campaigning for Trump. So it's not the diaspora is only located in America, so they'll be disinterested in India. They are interested in both, being Indians as well as Americans, and this is a complexity of state and nationality which we have to be kind of consistently bothered about. I would like to say another point, that imperialism is very important part of nationalism and nation state. Imperialism simply defined means asymmetrical relationship of interdependence between advanced and backward societies, materially advanced and backward societies, asymmetrical relationship of interdependence. United States policies have been imperialist, there will be no doubt about it. In fact, after the Cold War began, the Second Cold War, United States tried to woo allies from Latin America, apartheid South Africa, Israel, Pakistan under Zia, Philippines under Marcos, in different parts, and continue with that Cold War. United States has also compromises democracy as a principle to win over allies and accommodate dictatorship. Russia has been imperialist too, as far as East Europe and Central Asia are concerned. And when Russia collapsed, these two regions revolted against Russia preeminently. But United States is still a very major imperial power. It withstood the problem of financial crisis of 2008. It is also facing pandemic today, but it has all the potentials to be a powerful country. But followed by United States is China. And China is the second most powerful country. And if you today look at China's role in Africa, how does one characterize it? Chinese consider their assistance as development assistance. That it's a development project they are aiding in Africa. But Chinese state, private company, Chinese labor, Chinese culture, Confucian centers, all are in Africa. Somewhere this has to be borne in mind. I would say imperialism has also another kind of important point that has to be mentioned, and that is humanitarian intervention. That you can try to save human rights of people, and this humanitarian intervention was made in erstwhile Yugoslavia in 1999 without authorization of United Nations. And they also, NATO countries, North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries, toppled Gaddafi's regime in 2011 in the same way, so under humanitarian interventions. To think of it, France in French Africa is imperialist, South Africa in Southern Africa is dominant, and you can go on as far as imperialism is concerned. My last set of points I would like to say that essence of nation states, I think irrespective of existential challenges, I would consider nation state is the most legitimate and legal entity that is promoting globalization, that is promoting regional organization, and you cannot do without it. Nation state also can help in working out, negotiate climate changes, and developed and developing countries can come together through agency of nation states to work out climate changes. Probably ecological destructions also can be stalled if nation states work together. Similarly, nuclear non-proliferation programs also can be worked out better, where less and less nuclear powers kind of become part of the world, and world is eventually denuclearized. But nation state is the agency for that. Human rights also is an important area where nation states can cooperate. Education is an area where internationalization of education can work, and COVID crisis also require transnational health structures to cooperate so that things happen. India already has this vaccine diplomacy in different parts of developing countries. There is South-South cooperation, North-South cooperation. All is possible with nation state as an agency. Nation states in the past have borne with problems along with civil societies and cooperation with civil societies. In the health sector, problems like tsunami, problems with like HIV, AIDS, SARS, and now it has to meet the challenges of COVID. And I'm sure nation state will be able to make that extra mile and face the challenge. So if I talk about substance of nation states, I would say the scope of operation of nation state is getting circumscribed, it is constrained, it is being dominated by the process of globalization from below and above, and at the same time, nation state is too powerful an actor, too primary an actor, and it has capacity to limit the process of globalization also, to limit the transnational actors and to limit the subnational actors, and emerge again as a strong kind of actor in global politics, and that's how I characterize nation state as an entity. Thank you.